a lady who had heard that we were not doing meals, and she was wondering how she was going to feed her family. So it just emphasizes the fact that poverty and hunger are very alive here in Niagara.
Something that struck me, Susan, last year, or no, 2 years ago, I guess now, was the issue of there being no toilets in the city. And what is the situation now?
I think that we still have no toilets, but I think the Market Square is open. They did have some portables open. I don't really know. I just know that the showers that we were also fighting for, showers are now happening at the Garden City Arena. There's a schedule that you can find through Silver Spire Church, who's taking a lead role here. And Silver Spire also will be opening an in-house shower program mornings very soon. They have really stepped up to the plate on poverty issues. I lost track of the toilets. It was a real fight. It was a real fight. And when one would go up, it would be vandalized, and that would just mean, well, we're not going to do it again. But the needs of people don't go away. And I know this is really serious. But so we survived COVID, and we have a cholera outbreak. This is terrible. And the neighbors, and there was an article in the paper about the neighborhood being upset, and I don't blame them. There's human excrement everywhere. So I don't think there's enough toilets, but I think there's a few more toilets. And I think with Tim Hortons being open and Start Me Up Drop-In being open and Positive Living Niagara, there's a lot of people that are able to use the toilets when the facilities are open.
Thank you very much. That's good. Any other announcements of anybody? I see a hand, Barb. Can you unmute yourself? Unmute yourself. She's unmuting herself now, I think.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to ask, is the Montebello, was it repaired, the washroom there? Did the other gal know? If
Susan?
Montebello Park
Mhm.
had been repaired?
No one has an answer.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Might I suggest Sarah Birch has something?
Yeah, I couldn't see you. Sorry, you're over there instead of here. Okay,
That's
go ahead,
okay.
Sarah.
I'll be quick, I promise. I just
Don't be
wanted
quick,
to,
but fine.
so thank you. My name is Sarah Birch. Pronouns are she and her. I'm with Positive Living Niagara. I'm the Women's Community Development Coordinator there. For those of you, I realize I'm just a lot of new folks on the call. So just wanted to mention that as part of my program, we're doing community consultations with women over the next few months. So I just wanted to let folks know, especially if you're working with women, I can please get in touch with me. Specifically, we're looking at wellness. Again, we're an HIV service organization, but the consultations aren't strictly about HIV. It's also about HIV prevention, and wellness and systemic impacts, systemic factors that impact HIV risk. It's especially focusing on anti-Black, Brown, and Indigenous racism, transphobia, women who experience violence, poverty, women experiencing addictions. So anybody who may be working with women who, there is a $30 honorarium for all participants, and this is an opportunity for women in the community to give feedback about what kind of services they need, and this will inform the work that not only I do, but this is also being joined with work that's being done across the province of Ontario to improve access to healthcare services and sexual health services for women across Ontario. So I can put my contact information in the chat. So if anybody wants to get in touch with me, I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Thank you, Sarah. Would you do that, please? So everyone knows there's a chat box on your screen somewhere. If you have a question for someone, or you have something that you would like to say or put in there, you're welcome to put it on the chat. Also, as the evening goes on, if you have questions, there's also an icon on your screen that says reactions. If you click on reactions, there's a one that says raise your hand. So if you want to, like, I'm going to show you right now on my picture, that's what it looks like. It's a little yellow hand up there. And that way I can admit or allow people to speak in order. So we know who's first, who's second, who's third. Okay. I would appreciate that. So we'll do that, and that'll be great. Thank you. Gracia?
I think that's everything, unless there are other announcements from anybody else. I would ask Irene if you could do one more thing for me, aside from explaining exactly how it's going to go with the speakers, etc. Could you give a pitch for next month's meeting, just very briefly, as to who's going to be coming to speak?
Certainly. Next month, our presentation will be on affordable childcare, lack of space, waiting rooms, that we'll have presentations from the region, from people involved in childcare. It's hard to get in right now because there's not enough room, and there are also not enough people. And part of that is because of the lack of proper salary and pay. So that's another issue. So we will be looking at that, and we'll have 3 people on the panel that will be able to speak on that topic. So you're all invited to come and join us for that if you're concerned about that. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so I think we have to wait till everybody gets in, and that may mean just waiting a few minutes without anything being spoken. But Irene, maybe you could explain the exact process for the speakers and the timing, etc., and whatever you expect.
Well, we'll have everybody on mute. We have, Nahid, how many speakers do we have? 3?
We have actually 4. It was 3, and actually one youth member, he came forward and he's bold enough to share his early school life experiences with us. So he is the 4th one.
Okay, so the speakers will all have a chance to speak, and then we'll hold off questions until after, and then we'll have discussion. So Nahid will introduce the speakers. They'll have their chance to present, and afterwards, as I said, then you can ask your questions. So keep on mute unless you're going to speak or ask a question, and then please, as I said, use the hand raise icon so that I can tell who's asking and who isn't. I have 40 people on the screen, so I have to keep track of everybody. It's not easy to do. Okay, thank you so much for your patience.
One more thing, Irene, one more thing. I don't have to put my hand up, at least technically. I will practice that because I know how to do it. But okay. Irene will give the speakers some warning before their time is up. And I think Nahid has told everybody it's 15 minutes each. And then at about 3 minutes before the time, or 2 minutes, say, then she'll give the warning and say to you that you just have so much time to do that. And each speaker will be introduced separately and by Nahid just before they speak. Any other questions? I see a hand. Natisha, is it? Or is it Ulmar? Umar. I can't read this very well. Umar Salam, would you speak? You've got a hand up. Can you unmute?
I don't see a hand up there.
Oh, I guess he doesn't. It's probably my little thing that looks like my thing looks like a hand. My goodness. Could have picked anybody. Anybody else have anything to say? Any questions? I don't hear them. I don't see them. So we have 5 more minutes of letting people in, because we just don't want to rush it so that people start, we want them to hear everything. And I think it's wonderful. I would like at this time to thank Suzanne Mason for helping with the press. That was really, really marvelous of her. And she worked on the press release. Now he got it together, and then Suzanne rounded it up, and and we sent it out twice, once with the poster. Went out to Brock University, the Niagara College, to as many people as we could think of are all our own contacts. We have 24 federated members groups and in Council of Women and about 28 individual members. And so it was a very broad distribution. I sent it out to a few of my people in the press. Don't think I got any results there, but today they don't even have an office at the St. Catherine Standard. So everything is done on the internet and it's a tight timeline. So it's difficult to negotiate the press right now. And so I think I have the right name here. Is it Carly? Is that you with your camera somewhere there?
Harley
Must have seen
Campbell,
me.
yeah.
Can't see, she's there somewhere, and Suzanne's there, so that's good.
Gracia,
Yes, Nahid?
yes. Actually, I just got a message from Constable Gul Mohammed. He is actually is doing his best to connect from his car, and he has got limited battery. So he just requested that if we can change the order and let him the first one to speak. So hopefully, I think it's all of our respected panelists have are agree with that. I think if we can shift him to the first in order from third to the first, is it okay? So for everyone,
That's up to you. It's up to you, Nahid. You're in charge there. I would like to say for those who've arrived just a few minutes ago. So I am Gracia James, and I'm replacing for a brief time. I hope Rai Kasavan. I have trouble, and she always told me I'd have trouble with her name. Kasavanhu, and her mother-in-law. She had to take her to the hospital, so she is trying to get in, and she'll be using her phone as well. So she won't be. We won't see her, but she'll be trying to get in as. And one of our other members, our corresponding secretary, can't be here. She's out of town. So,
Sheikh Yusuf Batata and Asma, are you okay if I change the order of the panelists to let our Constable Gul Mohammed to participate, because he has limited battery and we want him to participate. I mean, he's doing his efforts and we must let him in first. This is what I suggest. Are you okay with that?
Of course, yes.
I'm fine with that, no problem.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, so we will start from Constable Gul Mohammed first. Okay, thank you.
just 2 more minutes. There should be anything I've forgotten. No, I don't think so. So we'll just wait till 2 more minutes and see. I'm going to put myself on mute, and well, maybe I better wait till I hand it over. Just a second. Thank you very much. I want to make sure my battery does not die during the presentation, he said from his car.
Listening to a presentation on Islamophobia. Everything good?
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll call you back later, but send me pictures.
There's somebody,
Okay, love you too.
somebody is not muted, but I guess Irene hasn't muted us all yet, and she will do that anytime now. You can wait for the mute in for about 30 seconds. Okay, there we are. Irene, you want to mute us, and except for the Nahid?
I will do that.
Did we start? It's 7:31. I think we should start now.
Yes, please, Nahid.
All right, thank you.
Go
I really
ahead and
appreciate-
start.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and merciful. Hello and assalamu alaikum to everyone. Islam, a religion of peace. It does not support nor promote terrorism. This panel discussion is meant to raise awareness and tackle threat of Islamophobia and systemic racism. Islamophobia is a prejudice constituted as a result of ignorance, fear, and hate. It's deeper than prejudice. It is a belief that injustices against Muslims are justified. We want to break these silos, a campaign to deconstruct and challenge these stereotypes about Islam and Muslims, to deliver our message of unity and peace for building towards a safer, stronger, and inclusive society. Happy Canadian Islamic Heritage Month, October 2021 to all. Which tribute the many contributions Muslim communities make wide across Canada. This panel discussion is a step to highlight and follow this lead and move forward. By seeing the recent series of attacks against Muslim communities, especially the London Absurd family attack, is a major one in the growing list of anti-Muslim hate crimes. We acknowledge and appreciated all the efforts from the government levels on this issue.
It just makes one dish.
And an outpouring of verbal support from all our politicians and dignitaries is appreciated, but is not enough. Though more concrete actions and strategies needed in reality to address and tackle the threat of Islamophobia, systemic racism, and hate crimes to rebuild the confidence and feeling of safety back to normal. For many Muslim immigrants, Canada has represented a beacon of safety. But in the view of these recent incidents, an uncertainty and feeling of fear also highlights the restlessness and outpouring of challenges Muslim population are facing currently. Even me, with my outfit, it's hard to judge my faith. Still, I felt that sense of fear and insecurity while going out in public, which gives me an inspiration to be bold, to speak out loud, and stand against this myth of Islamophobia, because Islamophobia impacts us all. Our today's action is important not only for us, but for our next generation. When we spread love and peace, we will get the same. Hatred can bring hatred in return. If every one of us has a role to play onwards towards acceptance, unity, and peace, which is sustainable and rewarding. Hearty thanks to NDCW for taking a lead to support and address this sensitive issue, which brought us all together today as one diverse community on one platform. Thank you everyone for joining us on this platform. I must mention that this topic has so much concern in Muslim communities that many of our active community members joining us today on Zoom with their families. We have support from all our local mosques in Niagara region. Representing today, Al-Salam Mosque, Niagara Fall. In peace, thank you, Nahid Qureshi. I'm honored to introduce today our panelists who are renowned and have command in their field. I'm going to introduce first Constable Gul Muhammad. Gul Muhammad, Niagara Region Police Services, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Unit. Gul has been graduated from Conestoga College and L'Oreal University. He has started his policing career with Edmonton Police Services and joined Niagara Region Police Service in 2018 with the goal to promote inclusivity within the police services and connect with richly diverse people in Niagara region. Gul Muhammad. Go ahead, Gul.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks a lot, Naeed, for the introduction. I'm going to whiz through my presentation, just so respectful for other people's time as well. So let me attempt to do my screen sharing. Oh, it says here host disable screen sharing. Is there a way I can get the Is there a way I can share my screen?
If the coordinator could make him a co-host, he can
It's,
share. his
I'm
screen.
done. I'm done. Go ahead.
Okay, let me try again. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so I just wanted to start with a quick introduction. Actually, I think that's the, so my name is Gul Mohammed. I'm with the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Unit. Joined with me is my Staff Sergeant, Nilan Dave. He will be assisting me in case I lose my connection. I'm actually in Collingwood right now, and then with the unit's specialist, Brianne Richardson. She's also in the meeting. We are actually here for a hate crime workshop. So I just quickly want to give you a disclaimer here. Obviously, this is going to be, I've taken out some of the terms that may be offensive. Obviously, this is, from police's end, we do a lot of enforcement. So we do have to deal with the reality of hate crimes. But if you do come across something that may be uncomfortable, I apologize in advance. I try to do as clean as possible, but just want to give you that disclaimer. So just for a quickly overview, the unit currently comprised of Staff Sergeant Nilan Dave, as I mentioned, myself and Specialist Brianne Richardson. We do have an email address, edi@niagarapolice.ca, which, and you'll see some of this presentation is also delivered internally. So you may see some components of it that also applies to police officers. I wanted to keep those in so you understand that we also, we also go around, we also give presentations internally as well. So yeah, I apologize for that. We can be contacted via phone, email, or through communications, which means is that if somebody calls 911, our comms unit, they can call as well. And we are located inside headquarters, which is at 5700 Valley Way in Niagara Falls. So what do? We do a lot of community relationships and outreach. We build, our job is building these relationships similar to what we're doing right now. Internally, we have our internal inclusion committee. We have our chief of police community inclusion council. Sarah, I know you're a part of it. We connect with, we try to connect with as many organizations as we can and their leaders through that. We have our internal support networks. So we internally, we try to support officers or civilians or our staff members who do need, in the course of their duties. I'm sure they come across a lot of different things and need to be supported. So that's the purpose for that. We assist our frontline officers when they follow up calls where there may be hate or bias related motivations. And we also provide any sort of assistance through translators or any support services to our frontline. So just some of the statistics here. Obviously, these are a little outdated. We'll have the latest one coming in with our latest, the one we just did, the survey there from the government. But right now, as you can see, our largest indigenous is our largest population. Then we have Black people, and then Chinese, South Asian, Latin American, Southeast Asian, Filipino, Arab, and West Asian, Korean, Japanese. So we have a healthy mix of a lot of different ethnicities within the Niagara region. But I know from just by living here since 2018 that the numbers have gone a lot higher. And for religions, Muslim, 4,275. I can very confidently say that number has changed. We have a sizable Jewish community, we have a sizable Hindu community and the Sikh community. But again, these numbers are from 2016, so they're a little bit outdated. I'm sure that somebody from within this meeting will have better numbers, and I'm hoping you'll share that with me as well. But we'll have a better idea once the results come out from the census. So this is basically the bread and butter of this presentation. There's a lot of, within the community itself, there's, I don't want to use the term misunderstanding on what a hate crime is, but we're kind of borderline on, what actually is a hate crime and what isn't, and what powers do police have on going after or investigating something that would be considered a hate crime or something that would be considered a bias motivated incident, which may not necessarily mean the threshold of criminal offense. So I'm hoping that this presentation will explain some of these things. Obviously, I'm going to be talking about some of the criminal code sections. It'll be a little bit dry, but if you do need some further explanations, please, ask your questions. So with the current climate and sensitivities, calls for service of hate or bias, obviously they're a priority. In that picture there, uniform officer, hate crime call, obviously very sensitive to when officers go to something that is considered base or bias or hate motivated. We tell our officers that if attending, be cognizant of your demeanor and actions can be political and receive significant media attention. Each victim needs to be treated with respect and personal opinions and beliefs not to be inserted into the investigation. This is extremely important because from the police's end, any investigation we go to, they have to be treated with respect, and obviously our officers cannot bring their personal opinions or beliefs into it. Doesn't matter what the investigation entails. You may have somebody who's maybe, somebody calls it in that they're anti-vaxxer, and me personally believe in that everybody should be vaccinated. I'm just giving an example. That's something that cannot be a factor when conducting an investigation. So what's the difference between hate crime and hate incident? So that's extremely important that we know the difference between them and how police approaches each investigation. So for hate crime, this is where the definition, the misconception in the community that there is a hate crime offense in criminal code. There is no such thing as hate crime that police can charge an individual for. It doesn't exist. Under the Criminal Code of Canada, there's nothing like that. It's a broad term that refers to both. So both hate crime and hate incident, we call that a hate crime or a hate incident, but there's nothing specifically that says you can charge this person for hate crime. The offenses related to hate or bias motivation, they can be broken down to 3 separate offenses, or aggravating circumstances when it comes to sentencing. And I'll explain that later on what that actually means. So for hate crime is when a criminal offense occurs that was motivated by hate or bias, okay? One of the most common one is hate propaganda. That's where you'll see posts online that is advocating genocide or advocating hate towards a protected group. And that's the keyword. It's a protected group. So for example, if somebody's posting something about, again, I go back to my anti-vaxxers. If somebody posts something about, anybody who's not vaccinated, they have to be eliminated or what, I mean, as bad as that is, if you do take the vaccine or don't take the vaccine, that's not considered a protected group. It has to be somebody from who's considered protected or equity seeking group. So for any of these charges, whereas hate propaganda, the important part is that the police cannot lay these criminal charges. It has to be approved by the Attorney General. So example of that is assault, threats, or mischief. So if something like that does happen, if somebody's assaulted because of that had a hate motivation to it, and that was preceded by propaganda, police will have to reach the Attorney General for their consent. And once the consent is granted, that's when that charge is laid. A hate incident is when a hate or bias is unknown or suspected. So if it's not completely black and white, if it's not something that is completely clear cut, that would be considered a hate incident. That usually lacks element that constitutes a criminal offense and doesn't meet the threshold to put somebody through the criminal court system. So example of that, mischief, so graffiti that has no affiliation to property which is found, online, internet, social media, form speech, or any sort of hate or bias motivated slurs. If we start charging everybody who, uses a slur, for example, like on the street, a slur is used and then the person walks away and you say, no, that is a hate crime, we'll be completely inundated with investigations, and the whole purpose behind what actual hate crime is will be lost. So that is extremely important. That would be considered a hate incident and wouldn't be considered a hate crime. So for hate propaganda, which is when you really look at what a hate crime is, it falls under these three categories. So under these three offenses, only one of them can be laid by police without consent. The other two, you need to have consent from the Attorney General. And just for the sake of understanding, the Attorney General's office is in Ottawa. So if a charge is being pursued, a police officer will have to put all the information down, and then it will, through our Crown office in Niagara region, it will be sent off to the Attorney General in Ottawa for their approval, which can generally take 6 months to a year. So offenses that are aimed to protect identifiable groups, any section of public distinguished by color, race, religion, national, ethnic origin, age, sex, all of these are protected, and they're the ones where a hate crime or hate offense would define. So if somebody advocates or promotes genocide and their intent is to destroy whole and part of an identifiable group, and they actually make that known. So if somebody posts something about killing members of a group, or deliberately inflicting on the group conditions, life calculated to bring about physical destruction, basically advocating harm, advocating hate to a point where you can say they're promoting genocide, that's something that requires an Attorney General's consent. And as of right now in Niagara, we had no such incidents or known investigations. Incitement of hatred is something that a police officer or a police in our investigative unit or detective would not require Attorney General's consent. And that is communicating statements in any public place that incites hatred against any identifiable group. So that is the most common charge that is laid, is incitement of hatred. So if somebody's standing in a public place with a microphone, a megaphone, and making statements which is clearly incitement of hatred, then that is, police do not require Attorney General's consent to arrest them and the criminal charge. So most typically you'll see them in rallies and protests, but it is extremely important to know that it has to be a public place. So if somebody privately in their own home, in a small group of their friends saying hateful things, that would not be incitement of hatred unless they're advertising it through social media or making it publicly available. That's when incitement of hatred comes in. This charge does not apply for anybody in their own private property. Willful promotion of hatred, that is communicating statements other than a private conversation that willfully promotes hatred against an identifiable group. So this one is something that requires the Attorney General's consent, and intent is key. So their motivation for making a statement, you have to prove that as an investigator. If you're not able to prove that the person had the intent, and I'm going to be talking about the defenses, but that is extremely important. You have to prove that the person's intent was to promote hatred. And there are 4 defenses that are identified that can be used by somebody who was charged by the police that, would be considered acceptable by the court. So if they established the statements were true, if it's in good faith, if the statements were relevant to subject of interest, or the 4th one is a bit of a complex one, but if somebody wanted to bring attention to something, and that's why they were making hateful remarks, I can tell you, even though these 4 defenses are identified, they don't necessarily mean that they'll be applied in court. So if somebody can't say that because in Bible or Quran it says that I'm just giving an example, that anybody who's homosexual, they should be killed. So that was my defense, and this is my defense, and this is the reason I was saying that. I'm just quoting something that's from the Bible or from the Quran. That would not be an acceptable defense. We already have case law on that, where the judge said no, not accepted, and the person was convicted. So even though these defenses are there, it's really rare to rely on them and for a person to say, I'm just saying something that's truthful. So aggravating factors, circumstances, if incident occurs, that doesn't mean the criminal threshold to proceed via hate propaganda sections. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be that it's not considered a hate crime. So if a criminal offense occurs and a person is found guilty, then a judge can consider aggravating circumstances and increase their sentence. So this is a perfect segue for me to talk about the incident that happened in church in St. Catharines, where Harriet Tubman's statue was toppled, and the suspect was apprehended and charged with mischief and breach of probation. Now, in this case, a judge can consider aggravating circumstances because of the shock to the community, the importance of that statue to that church, and what it represents. From the police's end, we don't have those previously mentioned charges where we can prove that it was incitement of hate, or the person was advocating genocide, or any of the other charges. That's where police limitations come in. But what we can do from police's end is we lay the criminal charges, and we can point out the aggravating factors, and in hopes that the Crown will point those out and the judge will impose a harsher sentence. So that's why it's important to note that just because something does not meet the threshold and the charges related to hate are not laid, does not mean that it's no longer a hate crime. Just because criminal charges are laid, that is itself a pretty big deal, and then we can request the judge to look at the aggravating circumstances. So when judges considering aggravating circumstances, offense has to be motivated by bias or prejudice against the protected groups, and also it's not in there, but also the impact on the community and the importance of for example, the importance of Harriet Tubman with that church and the historic factor with it. So that's all of these have to be considered by the judge. And in this case, that is something that we will be putting forward to the Crown. Usually what happens is that whenever one of these incidents come to our attention, we do consult with with all the appropriate agencies, including the Crown and with the victims, and see what we can do to make that an aggravating a factor for the judge. I think I'm pretty close to my time here. Yeah. Again, that my email address is right there. Brianne Richardson, she's the specialist. Her email address is there as well. Best way to reach us is through our email address, edi@niagarapolice.ca. And I think I've covered everything. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if you have any questions, please feel free to fire away. Oh, actually, sorry.
We'll do
going to be end. Right,
We'll do
okay.
the questions after, but there is a question on chat for you that you can think about answering, okay?
Irene,
Yes,
we are getting short of time.
yes, I know. We'll go on to the next one.
So I think everybody should got the fair share of their time. So I think if we could keep the questions in the last, that might be really helpful for everyone. Well, rest up to others. If you want, if everybody agreed, then go ahead, please.
Well, you can introduce your next speaker.
All right. Thanks, Gul. Niagara Region Police Services contribution is really valued to us, and thanks for joining us. And I believe there are a couple of questions there, so we are going to take it when we are going to go for the question and answer at the end of the panel discussion. Thank you again. All right, I'm going to introduce. It's my great honor to introduce Sheikh Yusuf Badat now. Sheikh Yusuf is born and raised in Toronto, has studied under some great scholars. He received with top honors several formal authorizations. Sheikh Yusuf is the founder and director of Mattaba Inc. He is the main Imam and Director of Religious Affairs at Islamic Foundation of Toronto. Sheikh Yusuf also serves as a teacher and as Imam since 1999. He is an Ontario Registered Minister of Religion. He also holds a diploma in network administration from Toronto School of Business. Sheikh Yusuf Badat. Go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Greetings of peace and blessings be with each and every one of you. I want to begin by thanking the entire group here for allowing me the opportunity. I know Nahid has been in touch with me over the last month or so and doing a lot of work to put this program together. I pray and I supplicate that God bless each and every one of us. So I know we are limited with time and we've heard already a presentation. So some of the points that may be overlapping, I may not bring them forth here. And hopefully this presentation will give us all a broader understanding of what we need to do. So the topic at hand is Islamophobia as a threat to unity. Now, Canada is a wonderful country. I personally was born here in Canada, and I went to school here as well. And over the years, I've seen our country changing. And as a successful country, what we need to certainly do is enhance our unity and our togetherness. And whatever serves as a threat to this unity, coexistence, and diversity, we need to challenge that threat. So the topic at hand is Islamophobia being a threat to the unity of coexistence. And as I said, whenever there's a threat, whenever there's some kind of danger, there's 3 steps that we need to take. Number 1 is we need to be aware of the danger that is at hand. Number 2 is we need to strategize and come up with an appropriate plan to protect ourselves from such a threat and such danger. Number 3, we need to evaluate and see whether what we are doing is part of the solution, or is it further aggravating and intensifying the problem. And the overall objective is we want to make our cities, our communities, our societies, our provinces, our country, and the world in general a better place. So when it comes to Islamophobia, as was mentioned in the introduction, that Islamophobia is real. Our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, the Honorable, had made it very clear at several occasions that Islamophobia is real. It takes place. There are many research bodies that are out there that are declaring Islamophobia as one of the greatest threats to world peace. And we've seen over the last a decade or so. In fact, many who research this topic, they say since 9/11, we've seen a lot of hate against those who identify with Islam on a peaceful walk in the COVID situation, just trying to get some exercise, etc. And all of a sudden they are, killed. And, the future of these children and this family was destroyed in seconds. We also heard of what happened in Quebec to pray to the Almighty. A place of peace was destroyed with the loss of several lives. And we're seeing many examples continue from time again and again. And as Nahid pointed out, many Muslims are now concerned about their safety and their well-being, even for going out for a walk, an evening stroll. So what is it that we can do as a community, as a society, as a country, to stop this growing threat of Islamophobia? We want unity in the community, we want coexistence, we want respect for diversity, etc. So what we need to do is certainly, as I said, number one is acknowledge that the problem exists. I've been on a lot of interfaith platforms as an imam, and in one of the interfaith programs I went to, there was actually a large group of Canadians who were saying that Islamophobia doesn't exist. It's not a problem. It shouldn't be even brought about. It shouldn't be even discussed. So when we have people not even ready to acknowledge that it's a problem, how can we even take the next step to determine whether we need to take action against this menace or not? So how many more sisters or women will it take whose hijabs are torn off? How many more youth who are named Muhammad or Usama or Ahmed or Yusuf, who are discriminated based on their names, and they're turned away from getting positions or jobs in their fields despite having the credentials and the experience and the skill set? How many more children will it take who are bullied at school because they identify with Islam? How many more innocent Muslims will it take who are called and labeled as terrorists just because they look a little bit different, or they practice their religion in a way that others may not be practicing? How many more Muslims will be shot in prayer at mosques till we begin to acknowledge that Islamophobia is a problem? How many more Muslims will be run over by vehicles to basically understand that Islamophobia is a threat? So again, the first thing that we all need to do is identify and acknowledge that Islamophobia is a problem. It is a sickness. It is a hate-based crime that exists within communities. For some, it's internal. They don't express it. There are others who express it on social media. There are others who talk about it amongst themselves within their own peer community. And there are others who, are very public about it. So again, what we need to do is acknowledge that the problem does exist. And what we need to do after acknowledging that the problem exists is we need to speak out, and we can no longer remain silent. There is a famous traditional report from the Islamic understanding, قُلِ الْحَقُّ وَإِنْ كَانَ مُرًّا, which basically means say the truth even though the truth may be bitter. So we may not feel comfortable in acknowledging that Islamophobia exists, or we may not feel comfortable in saying that Muslims should also have an equal right to access justice and to report hate crimes and to, determine certain actions of hate as Islamophobic actions and crimes. And we need to speak out. No matter what, we need to identify oppression and speak out about oppression and hate. And this goes back to all forms of racism. And in fact, racism is, Islamophobia is a form of racism. So some may discriminate on skin color or background or language, etc. And discriminating or presenting injustice against a community because they identify with Islam, that is a form of racism. So in reality, what we need to do is end all forms of racism. If I am not ending racism when it comes to people who don't look like me, then I won't be able to really challenge Islamophobia as well. So in every aspect of our lives, we need to tear down those pillars of racism, and we need to do what it takes to address the matter that's at hand. And what else we need to do is partner with all different sectors. We all have a role to play. You know, when we cook a meal, there are always several ingredients in order for the meal to come out tasty and perfectly. If we even forget one ingredient, or we don't include an ingredient to its capacity, then the end result will be that the product, the cake or whatever we are making or baking, it will not be to the par that we have anticipated to be. So in a similar fashion, if there's only one sector of the community that's addressing Islamophobia, and the rest of the community and the society or sectors of the government, etc., are not addressing Islamophobia, then it cannot be challenged. And that's why we need to partner on all levels. So politicians need to do their part. The Muslim community is really concerned that politicians are often saying that Islamophobia is a problem, but then the question is, what are we doing about the problem? What are we doing about the issue? What are we bringing about laws? And are we putting in place punishments and consequences for those who harbor hate based on Islamophobic and hateful tendencies? So again, politicians need to do their part. Educators, school boards, they need to address the matter. And I'm beginning to see, for example, this is Islamic History Month. Just today, I was invited at a old age home to donate some Qur'ans because they have a presentation and they have a little display for the residents there about Islam. I was called also recently to give a presentation to an entire school, again, based on the heritage and the history of Islam. So if educators also do their parts, school boards also do their parts, then our children will begin to grow up understanding that Muslims are also humans. They may look different than us. They may pray different than us. They may have different places of worship than us, but they are also part of the society, and they're just like us humans, and they're not aliens or some people who are not part of the community and the society. The media needs to do their part as well. Many a times there are so much inaccurate information. You know, there's systematic racism against Muslims in the way Islam or Muslims are portrayed in the media. A simple example, if a non-Muslim commits a crime it's horrific, it's a crime, it's looked down upon, but the way it's presented in the media and the headlines that are brought about, compared to a Muslim committing that same crime, it all of a sudden becomes something to do with Islam. It becomes something to do with the religion, and it's society, a whole community is singled out, and it becomes a sensational story. It becomes the front page, etc. But that very same crime is perpetrated by a Christian or by a Hindu or by another denomination. That type of headline and that type of sensational racism against that person is not displayed. So again, the media needs to do their part as well. Corporations and businesses, they need to have sensitivity training in reference to how to deal with Islam and Muslims, and also the challenge of Islamophobia. Interfaith leaders, many a times there are people in religious sectors who discriminate based on religion. And again, if we do not involve this sector as well, this will lead to not solving the problem, rather intensifying the problem. So again, we need to acknowledge, we need to take a practical step. Every one of us need to ask ourselves, what am I doing to be a part of the solution rather than become the part of the problem? And the reality of the matter is we need to also convey the great things that our communities are doing. Even though Islamophobia is a problem in our societies, there's a lot of good that's going on in the community. And an example is right in front of us here, an organization like yourselves, all of you that are participating here, you're listening to these presentations, you're addressing this problem of Islamophobia. So this is a great story that needs to be shared in our communities, that, you know what, we're talking about this problem and we want to be a solution to the problem. There's a lot of great things that Muslims do within our communities. Just to give a few examples here, some of you probably heard of the name Dr. Sharkawi. He's a virus specialist. And when COVID-19 hit, right at the conclusion of 2019, he is and continues to be one of the great specialists who has contributed tremendously in dealing with this whole threat of COVID-19 and bringing about the best of health for our communities across Canada. In every hospital you go, you will see there are Muslim doctors. Last couple of years ago, there was a church in Mississauga here in the GTA, in the Greater Toronto area, that was vandalized. And the first organization that came about to repair the church was a Muslim community, a Muslim mosque that was not too far from the church. They did a fundraiser and they said, we're going to help our neighbors. And they were able to come up with the funds to repair the damage that was caused at the church. So these are great stories of ordinary Canadians who belong to the Muslim faith, bringing about positivity and contributions within our communities and our societies. I am the Imam and the clergy, the Minister of Religion at the Islamic Foundation of Toronto. And we have a number of programs. We have a hot soup kitchen. And most of the poor that come and attend at the mosque for meals are not Muslims. They are people coming in from shelters in the communities that don't subscribe to Islam, yet the Muslim community is providing this service every Saturday to feed the poor in the community. We have the Eid al-Fitr and the Eid al-Adha drives, wherein these are days of our festivities, where we distribute thousands of kilograms of meat to the less fortunate and the poor. And many a times when we've interviewed some of these poor, they haven't had meat for weeks often, and sometimes even months. And again, these are great stories. During Christmas, many Muslim restaurants, they distribute free meals within the communities so that our Christian brethren and community can enjoy their Christmas despite their challenging circumstances and situations. So these are just a few examples, and I'm sure every one of you have had some interaction in some way or the other with Muslims. And again, as the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, said, "Kun miftahan lil khair wa mighlaqan lil shar." And I will conclude with this statement. As I've already seen the sign here, I've got 2 minutes. The Prophet of Islam said, we need to all be keys to goodness, and we need to be locks for evil and harm. So if all of us do our part in whatever capacity we have, we all have some authority, we all have something that we can do to be part of the solution. If we do that, we will be a key to spread goodness and end this menace, end this cancer of Islamophobia and hate, and we will be mighlaqan lishar. We will be locks to evil that may spread. So we all have a role to play. My final remark is that we should never lose hope. There are always good people, more than those who may harbor hate. And the reality is the people who do harbor hate, they need the most help. They need to understand that hate will never bring about any kind of peace within their own lives or their communities. It's love, it's respect, it's understanding, it's coexistence, it's working together. It's easy, to eat and to talk to someone who looks just like you, to sit with someone who shares the same values or the same religion. The real challenge is, are we ready to sit with someone who doesn't look like us? Are we ready to afford and accord the same respect that we give to someone who looks like us, to someone who doesn't look like us or who doesn't share our principles or our religion? So with these words, I conclude. I pray that God give us all the ability to have all the understanding. We pray for healing and protection during these challenging times of COVID-19. We pray that we never remain silent in the face of oppression, racism, or any kind of hate or Islamophobia. We pray that we end all forms of racism. We establish partnerships with all sectors of our communities and our societies, and we be beacons of mercy, hope, and solutions. With this, I conclude. Thank you very much. I look forward to the questions during the Q&A session.
Thank you. Jazakallah khair, Chef Yusuf, for your input. It's really engaging. Thank you so much. Now I will introduce to you a scholar and researcher, Dr. Asma Ahmed, an adjunct professor at Niagara University, Faculty of Education. She has done her PhD from Western University in Critical Policy, Equity and Educational Leadership Studies. Asma is an anti-Islamophobia researcher and educator, mostly focused on Islamophobia in schools, about how the communities and the teachers can recognize Islamophobia and challenge its harm to dismantle systemic and institutional racism. Asma is editor-in-chief of First Magazine in Canada, SMS, Supporting Muslim Students, a digital biannual magazine for educators and parents, aimed to support Muslim students in both public and Islamic schools. Asma is the mom of 3 boys and a girl, and she deems her little kids as her biggest members. Asma Ahmed.
Hi, everyone. I'm actually very humbled to be here. Very honored to be amongst all of you guys. Nahid has been an extremely strong support and, trying to onboard all of us. I think she mentioned me as a scholar, but I'm actually a student of knowledge. I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form. So, but I'm humbled with that, to be with all of you. It's my kids' sleep time. So I have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 4.5, and a 2.5. So you might hear them in the background, and I want to just apologize for that. But thank you again for inviting me. This is a much needed conversation. So I wanted to actually, can I get some access to share my screen? I think that would be a little bit helpful.
You're welcome to. It should be working.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Irene. Can you see my presentation?
I can. I think everyone can. I have it.
Fantastic. There we go. So I wanted to start with Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So all praise is to God Almighty, the Lord, the Creator, the Sustainer of the heavens and the earth, the Master of the Day of Judgment. And I bear witness and I testify that there is no God worthy of worship, and Muhammad is the final of all the messengers. So I love the talk today. When Mr. Gul and Sheikh Yusuf spoke about Islamophobia in the community, mine is more an the niche of schools and students, and how Islamophobia is impacting their confidence in their religion and their confidence in being both Muslim and Canadian in the society. I like to start my talk actually with a story. I started my education, or I started my work as an Islamic school teacher, and I found this young Black Muslim boy show up to my classroom. His first day of school was October, so he missed a month of school. And he says to me, my father came to London because of London Islamic School, which is the school that I used to work in. And he says, I knew how you looked like before the first day of school. We went on the website and we saw your picture. So let's call this kid Zakaria. Or Zach or Zakaria. And on this one October morning, Zakaria's father was, he was the only breadwinner for his family. When I was beginning my master's, he'd been unemployed since he came to London in August, and he had been willing to, risk unemployment to ensure that his children would go to the Islamic school of his choice. Zakaria and his older and younger sibling all moved to London. His older brother actually began associating with disreputable friends at the time when they were in Toronto, and to the distress of his parents, eventually left home. He had only a superficial knowledge of Islam, and his confidence in the faith had withered. Zakaria's father vowed actually that his other children will not struggle like his older son when it came to faith and holding on to his faith. He researched the cities in southwestern Ontario. I remember recalling him telling me the story to find a friendly, academically strong, Islamic and professional school for his children. So that's how he chose the London Islamic School. There are many stories like Zakaria I've noticed as my research was progressing. Muslim youth who lose confidence in their faith and who are not rerouted or assisted by their family or community members often find themselves lost and engulfed by peer groups who have no affiliation to their faith, especially in this in the context that we're in. And I kept on asking myself back then, and I feel like I ask myself this question, and as researchers, and we kind of ask the same questions over and over again. And my question was, who will restore to them their positive sense of self, right? And acknowledge and affirm and respect the Islamic worldview and the Islamic values. Who would do that for them if not their schools, right? If they're not their community members. So I explored the value of Islamic schools in my master's thesis. And when I completed my master's thesis, I felt like I felt this yearning that my question wasn't answered. So I went into public school, and I did my PhD in public school. And at the time I had 2 kids, very young, not school age, but I constantly asked myself, should they go to public school or should they go to private school? What are the pros and cons? Should I surround them mainly by Muslim peers and predominantly Muslim educators who may understand and appreciate their Islamic background and values, and there is not many, there's not much Islamophobia? Or should they be exposed to a mainly Eurocentric curriculum and teachers who are predominantly unversed about Islam and Muslims, and perhaps because of the context that we're in and the media messaging have acquired some of the messaging out there? So as a Muslim Canadian educator, I believe in public schooling. I also believe exposing children from a young age to different cultures and backgrounds and religions, and this kind of exposure makes them appreciate diversity and so on. So I felt like students generally, let me get to the slide. Students see the value of when they're in Islamic settings. Students see the value of Islam and Islamic contribution and Islamic scholars and their Muslim teachers and the culture of the school, and therefore. But Islamic schools are not perfect either, right? So I had to look into the public school and how public schools are doing it. I enjoyed my public schooling. for me as a former student of public school, it was not my schooling that gave me the pride in my faith, but rather the consistent and unrelenting efforts of my parents and the community, like what Nahid and the other community members are doing. I enjoyed the public school, and I'm still in touch with some of my teachers, but I did not develop an appreciation for Islamic values and contributions to the production of knowledge. I grew to have tremendous respect for Western scholars and Western literature. I thought there was no other noteworthy contribution to the sciences and literature than that of the West. And I think that's changing a little bit as in this year, with Islamic Heritage Month coming. I think we're exposing the students a little bit more to like the diversity and how, it's not just the Eurocentric knowledge production, but there's other communities that are also producing equally strong knowledge. So, Muslims definitely face specific challenges related to their adherence to Islam, which they may require support for from their, respective schools. Islam and Muslims are perceived as strange and different by over 50% of the population, as suggested by the Environics, the Muslim study that came out in 2016. Muslim youth who want to practice their faith in schools have been faced with numerous challenges directly from administrators and teachers, but also indirectly from their peers, and misconceptions about Islam held by teachers exacerbate the Muslim youth's anxiety about practicing their faith and identifying outwardly as Muslims. The obvious difference visible to others observing Muslims in prayer, other forms of worship contribute to Muslim students' feeling of alienation and self-consciousness, which kind of brings me back to why I thought of bringing everything that I love about, in my master's and my PhD, and putting it all together in a magazine, the SMS magazine, which is short for Supporting Muslim Students. It's Canada's first magazine to help educators and parents to support Muslim students. I thought so many people are doing these amazing work, and this magazine is just a hub to bridge the gap between the ivory towers, the researchers, and the practitioners, the teachers. And I just hope that this magazine, which is a biannual publication, so it came out in October, that was the inaugural issue, and the next one is coming in April, will bring to the practitioners and the parents a breath of fresh air every 6 months, like a loaf of bread fresh from the oven, ready for them to use in their classrooms, both for the parents and for the students to support the students. And I continue to ask the same questions as my research continues. How do educational partners of the school understand issues related to Muslims? What kind of supports are there for Muslims? Considering the supports, what challenges do Muslim students still face in the school, and how we as a community, and I think this is a perfect example, how we as a community can help. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Nahid if she wants to take any questions.
Thank you, Asma. That was really engaging, and you are pretty much well in time. So that's really very nice of you. Thank you so much. Finally, I want to introduce a representation from our youth generation, who is bold enough to share his real school life experiences. Yanal Al-Isa. So Yanal, go ahead, please.
Thank you for inviting me, Nahida. I will start with telling you guys about my story and experience within a high school about Islamic phobia. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَجَعْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ عَارَفُوا صَدَقَ اللَّهُ الْعَظِيمُ. In the name of God, the most curious, the most merciful, the great truth of God. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yanal. I arrived with my family as a visitor to Canada. My parents found Canada a nice and safe place to live. Now it's been 7 years. I know many things changed in our life, except our beliefs in Allah and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I never thought I will stand against anyone who is different in beliefs or religions. But what happened at school, I couldn't ignore any bad words spoken about Islam or Muslim people. But that happened at school. I couldn't ignore any bad word spoken about Islam or Muslim people, but that was an issue came in my school life. But on the other hand, I know that my parents teach me and my brother that Allah is with us everywhere, and to be a good Muslim, you should respect all others, and that what I did during my study at high school. So when I have an argument with the students, how they throw bad words about Islam, I was able to stop myself to argue them. But I found the support from Muslim students, also non-Muslim students, that the good friendship. I should build my respect others. I remember what Allah said in the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله خبير صدق الله العظيم. And that is translated in the name of the God, most gracious, the most merciful people. We have created you from a male and a female and made you in the nations and tribes that you might know one another. The nobles of you before Allah is the most righteous of you. Allah is the knower, the award, the God Almighty has spoken the truth. From the point I found myself more confident to stand for my religion on a strong platform where I found a support from people I bent in their mind and a good idea of Muslims. Thank you.
Thank you, Yanal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
are
very much
bold
for
enough to come forward and participate. I must mention in the last that with Yanal, other youth came forward and participating on this platform. We welcome them all. Thank you. Really, we appreciate it. So we are pretty well in time, not too bad actually. It's 8:33, so we are going to take the questions and answers. So go ahead, please.
Okay. So, as chair, I'm Gracia James, and those my last name is not there. And that was very, very illuminating. And I'm sure we have some questions, but could I take the liberty as acting chair of this meeting to ask a question? And it may seem frivolous, but to me, it's, I just read an article the other day that the young woman who created a little mosque on the prairie was making another film, another TV. I asked the question of all of the speakers, so if each one of them might, or maybe one has knows about it, has watched it, but has it changed anything? Do you think it has made a difference with people who watch this? Is that the kind of medium that is non-threatening, is humorous, but there may be some faults in it? I'm not sure. Could I ask Yusuf perhaps to answer that question? I'll direct it to Yusuf.
Yes, I personally have watched a few episodes of Little Mosque on the Prairie. From my perspective, I believe it was a great piece of work that was done. It was a medium to talk about some of the issues that Muslims generally face. Some Muslims may be disturbed by the show because some of the points may not have been accurately presented. But other than that, it's in general, it's a medium. It's a way to discuss Islamic topics and what Muslims face. And as you said, it's humorous, so it's lighthearted. And I think more and more work like this will definitely serve as a positive contribution towards addressing some of the issues that the Muslims face in the community.
Thank you. Other questions? Do we have do I see anybody's hand up? I'm waiting to see if there's a hand with a question. I can't see everybody, so I can't see all the hands. Maybe Irene, you should direct the questions because you can probably see everybody.
I don't see any hands up.
No hands up.
And I
It was
don't
so
know.
illuminating that we don't have any questions.
Some people asked questions on chat and those questions were answered. Nirai has just raised her hand. Go ahead, Nirai.
Thank you, Irene. And Gracia, just want to say thank you for chairing in my place. I have a quick question for, I guess, everybody in the panel, anybody. Yeah, now it's great to see you on the panel, by the way. I know that most of the times we have these talks when incidences happen, and there seems to be a sense of urgency, or the reactions tend to be more intervention than prevention. How can we, as a community, have ongoing conversations that ensure that we are not just having these kind of platforms only when an incident has happened, but we are bringing to light and there is education going on all the time?
I can start off and then pass it on to the other speakers. So I agree with the point here that we shouldn't be a reactionary community or a society. Any issue, not only Islamophobia, racism against Blacks, drugs in the community. There's so many pressing issues within our communities, and we should not only be addressing them or talking about them when some major events occur. So similarly, when it comes to Islamophobia, I think every so often it should be something that is brought about in our discussions, in our forums. Personally, as a community leader, as an imam, I go out to interact with various communities. I do a lot of interfaith work. We open our mosques for inviting people to see what Muslims do. We have some pamphlets, we have some books that we distribute to anyone who wants to know or learn about Islam. So I think as Muslims, we need to do our part in opening our doors, interacting with others, sharing our stories and our experiences. And at the same time, non-Muslims should have the ability to access some of this information, to talk to their neighbors who are Muslims, to interact with them. And again, there's two ways to do this. One is on a formal level where we have these type of events, or we have a formal organization to address these topics and these themes. But on an informal level, we could be doing this every day. If you have a Muslim coworker or a colleague, or someone who's maybe just a student with you, it's important to interact with them. I remember many years ago, I saw a study or a survey that was carried out, and this was probably right after 9/11, and the question was posed, what do you think about Muslims and Islam? And the result of the survey was that those who had interacted with Muslims, they had a positive perception about Islam and Muslims. And those who had very minimum interaction or no interaction at all with a Muslim, they had the most negative impression about Islam and Muslims. So that proves a lot. The more we interact with one another, the more we come closer to one another, the more we understand each other's perspectives. I think that will make things easier and give us all the ability to coexist peacefully and also address the challenge at hand, whether it be Islamophobia, hate, or racism.
Gul Mohammed, did you want to respond to that too?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot. And my name may be coming different. I just logged in from my phone. So from policing as a profession, the dynamics of how we did business has changed. It's not just reactive policing anymore. It's common understanding that police have to be proactive. So in that sense, that's why we're Niagara Regional Police. We established our EDI unit just for that purpose, to be involved in the community, and education plays a big part of it. Now, it's understanding that, police are tied with legislation, and we can only go so far when it comes to laying criminal charges and investigations and what we can release in public and what we cannot release in public, because the integrity of the investigation has to be protected, which we're bound by legislation to do that. But at least the least we can do is go out, do our educational piece, and try to be as open and transparent as possible. So this being theme of Islamophobia, we from the EDI unit, we try to go to mosques. The Peace Mosque in Niagara Falls, that's usually my go-to because I have a really good relationship with the imam there, but other mosques as well. We're always looking for opportunities to come down, present, be part of the community, in whichever way we can be part of the events. I've been lucky enough to be invited to the Eid events, and I'm hoping that it continues. We want to be involved. We want to be out there. We want to be, as open as possible. So now that we have one thing that we're working on it's a good time to introduce this actually, is a pamphlet on what a hate crime is and what a hate incident is. So you will be seeing some pamphlets in the community that will explain that. And also we're trying to open our line of communication that if somebody wants to come forward and report something, they're not comfortable approaching police or calling 911. There should be other avenues available, and that's something that we're also exploring. So you'll always see us evolving, and we're also open to suggestions as well. We may not have all the answers, but if you do come forward and present something to us and say, hey, maybe you guys want to look into this, I can assure you that it is taken very seriously. So continue education from our end as well. I think that would be the answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gul. We have
Wayne
two more.
Wayne
Two
Campbell
more
has,
hands up.
Wayne Campbell has a question, Nahid.
Yes.
I have a question as much as a comment. Several years ago, first of all, I'm a member of City Council in Niagara Falls. I was at a convention and I talked with Yasser Naqvi, the former Attorney General in the Wynne government. And based on our conversations, he said to me that the legal system is dealing with mental health, and we are not capable of dealing with it. If I went to a hospital and said I had cancer, there'd be a follow-up program. If I went to a hospital and said, I want to commit suicide, they'd spend time with me for 2 or 3 days and then release me when they thought I was okay. My point is, I can't help but think of a lot of the negative things that this discussion has been dealing with, deal with people with mental health.
Thank you, Wayne. Munira Sadikali. You have a question? You're on mute. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Hi there. I'm using an iPad that I'm not used to using. Can you see me, or anyway,
Yes.
Can you hear me? Good. I just had a comment that maybe could be turned into a question if they want to give a comment on it. So I'm aware that the media, and I missed some of the talk, but the media is very good at division, right? That's kind of the way that you can create controversy, and controversy creates eyeballs. So I wanted to just see if there's any comments about that, and also relevant to our current times. They're trying to divide people at the moment based on, medical interventions they decide to take or not, or whatnot. And so I wanted to see, and even people are being asked to be excluded from society in mosques in the future based on that. And I think there's some dangerous precedents, especially given that there's financial incentives involved. So anyway, I wanted to any comments on the media and the meta narrative with respect to these things, because having seen Islamophobia coming from media narratives from 9/11, I'm very concerned with new media narratives in our current situation with respect to medical processes or accepting governmental, over impeaches on our rights. So any comments on that? Thank you.
So I must say, Gul or Sheikh Badat, are you going to?
Okay, so I'll just say a few points and then I believe
Thank you
Asma
so
wants
much.
to say something. So I agree, as I said in my presentation, that media is one of the factors that has resulted in, as you say, division and also inciting people towards hate. So we want a society that is not divided. We want a society that respects everyone. We want a community and a society that's able to work with everyone, regardless of their background or medical health or etc. And what we need to do is, if we see the media, taking steps that are harmful for the community, we need to call them out. We need to let them know. I'll just give you a personal example. Because we're talking about Islamophobia, I read a piece once, I believe it was in the Toronto Star, and there was so much inaccurate information about a historical Islamic event that took place, and the angle of the story was to basically portray Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, in a very horrible way. So when I read that, I saw how inaccurate it was. I immediately drafted an email. I sent it over. The editor got in touch with me, and it resulted in an apology and educating the author, because the author was not educated at all about the actual event and the facts of the event. So I think if the media is taking steps that are leading to further division or inciting hate and propaganda or divisions, we as the citizens of the country and the community who digest this media, we need to take them to account. We need to, call them out on their inaccuracies. And media is supposed to be fact-based. But to tell you the truth, I don't trust the media at all, because I've personally gone through several events and incidents and occurrences, and the media has reported very negatively or inaccurately when I knew the facts and of the matter. So again, as you said rightfully, whatever creates the eyeballs, that's what they're gonna put out there on the media. So we need to be very careful when we consume media. If they are making mistakes, if they are inaccurate, we need to call them out.
So if I may, I think, like Sheikh Yusuf said, I think constantly, because the default is that there will be negative images, negative articles, negative, projections of Islam on the media, then there always has to be a counter narrative that is there in conjunction with that to offer the other side, right? So recently, after the London attacks, I noticed CBC has, in its even in the news, started to be more conscious of how the Muslims are being portrayed. So I think the London attacks has actually opened a lot of eyes, and also a lot of the news outlets were very open. So when I submitted my article to the conversation about how teachers are falling prey to some of the misconceptions about Muslims, they were very eager to publish it. And maybe this was like the Islamophobia bandwagon that everybody wanted to kind of jump on. But at the same time, I think, it has opened a lot of eyes to how Muslims are portrayed, and Islamophobia kills. Like, now we know that Islamophobia kills, right? So it's not just like, it's actually the safety of our citizens, the well-being of our citizens, the well-being of our youth that is at stake. So I think ethical journalism is kicking in, and I'm glad Sheikh Yusuf mentioned that we have to hold them accountable, and I'm glad you shared that story, is because now the news outlet that the Toronto Star, I believe you mentioned, now they will be thinking twice, right? Because they know that their readership will not allow for such misreadings of Islam. So it's nice to kind of have that, to continue to read and consume this in a way that we are also offering that counter narrative and providing the accountability that the media is there for.
Thank you, Asma. Wayne, did you have something to add?
Yes, I would love to. The media is going to report on what is happening at the time. If it's negative, they're going to report negatively. If it's positive, they're going to report positively. We need to send a different message, whether, I don't care whether it's Jewish or Islam or any other religion. We always need to move forward with a positive comment. And a lot of things I've heard tonight were a result of negative things that people have experienced. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Gracia? Unmute, Gracia.
And can I? Yes, sorry, not technical. Is there any good news related to the internet? I know that there have been investigations on different levels. I don't follow it closely, but I just sort of notice that there's some rules being made, some retraction, some kind of withdrawal by some of the networks that are cracking down on the issues around trafficking and all of those things. Is there anything that's being done that's positive about racism of any kind in the internet world? Is there a techie here who can tell me there's been some progress to give us a little bit of hope? I mean, Little House on the Prairie is a little mosque on the prairie that I mentioned, that, and the new one that's coming. That's hope. But are there other things that people are aware of and that at the corporate level are doing something about?
I think, Gul, you have an answer to that, or you have something to add?
No, that was an excellent point. I just wanted to quickly comment that the assumption that internet provides you with an anonymous form to post whatever you want and there's no consequences, that notion it's not true. Yes, with internet there is you are afforded certain up to a certain point, but the police investigations and even with our partnerships with our with social media companies and whatnot, there are consequences, and people. This is one of those things where a lot of times people think police won't be able to do anything because this is all over the internet. There are consequences, and I just want to get that point across, that if you do post something, and you may change your username and may try to be as anonymous as possible, but if there are hateful messaging out there, police do become aware of it, and our investigators are really, really good at identifying who the people are and actually bringing them to in front of courts.
That is good news. Thank you.
Nahid?
I think the other hands are raised before me. So if somebody want to go ahead.
Thank you, Irene. I just wanted to respectfully disagree with what Wayne just said, that, the media, when the media reports negative, it's because there's a negative thing. And if they report positive, it's because there's a positive thing. I think that is actually a very dangerous statement, because there are certain medias that are there to push negative rhetoric about certain groups of people. And so if we are saying that if they have reported something negative, it is because there is something negative. We are therefore supporting the negative narratives that are being put out by the media about certain groups. And I am speaking as a Black woman who comes from a community where, and I don't want to overtake the Islamophobia platform here, but as a minority, I live in a group of people where there's a lot of negative rhetoric and narrative about us, and some of it mostly untrue. And media will push that. And for you to say that they are pushing it because it is there, unless I misunderstood, I think that in itself is a problem.
Well said. As a politician, I've come to realize that the media writes about what's happening in our community. And if I create a negative position, it doesn't help with respect to what I'm working towards. I think it's extremely important that this whole thing about Islamic or Jewish or whatever needs to have positive responses in the media to create positive things happening.
Okay, Nahid, I guess.
All right. Thank you for everybody, and I really appreciate all of the questions or the views people are sharing on this platform. I really appreciate and respect them all. The reason we started this idea of the session on Islamophobia was the real experiences that I personally I face and I share with the others. We are trying to present the reality of life that exists here. And all of these speakers who speaks here, it's kind of a very positive approach panel discussion, and we try to stick to that. I think everybody has got the right to share their opinion and their personal experiences. And there are sometimes defects are there, and we should be bold enough to face and accept the facts. That is reality of life. If somebody didn't face it, that doesn't mean that that is not happening actually. Yes, I personally myself is a very positive approach person, and I always see the views and the life in a very positive way. Whatever our panelist has discussed is their personal experiences, and we didn't try in either way to upset anybody or to say something that goes to in a negative direction, but we try in a very positive way. And there are certain reality of life, and when we are going through any kind of these challenges, we should try to put ourselves into the shoes of others, the people who are facing or suffering or whatever. So that is my basic actually the point or the reason that I start discussing on the NDCW platform, and they agreed to go with the. It was kind of actually a awareness session to create unity and peace and harmony among the Niagara community. I started it with a very positive and very in a very positive manner, actually, very positive approach to go through it. And that's the reason when I choose my panelists, we discuss everything. And I think they have tried to be on the very basic framework of the panel discussion that we were discussing. And I have nothing to say about the media, but because I don't have personal experiences with the media, not much experiences with the media. But the fact is that sometimes I also read on news or something in the media that was not actually very correct about the faith or the religion we are following. So, I mean, when you see something or hear something, it's a positive approach, and we should be bold enough to say or try to correct it if it is not presenting in the right way. So, because we are a very inclusive community, and we should all try to respect and try to understand and learn the faith and the all the culture that the others are following. That's the way we should be able to make an inclusive and unite and as a peaceful community. So that's what my basic actually my basic point of view that I just want to explain. I really appreciate it. Whatever is said onto this platform, everybody has got their right and their views to discuss and share, and that is really appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Gracia? Gracia, you're muted.
There we are. I think Narai was going to thank our speakers now, and I'm still the chair sort of because she's just visited. Narai, are you ready to thank? I think it's right at 9 o'clock, which is amazing. I think that was perfectly timed by Nahid.
Thank you.
Narai, just before you thank everyone, I just want to let everybody know that I have recorded this presentation. And if anyone is interested in sharing it or seeing it, it will be kept for 10 days. And after that, it will be deleted. So you can either email Nahid or email the One Niagara Council of Women at gmail.com. I put it in the chat, and I will send you the link to share with for you to see, or for whoever maybe missed it that you know. Okay, sorry, Mirai, that's yours.
Thank you, Irene, and Gracia, thank you for standing in my place while I was at the hospital. And Nahid, thank you so much for organizing this and having the panelists come. We just want to extend big thank you to the panelists. And I think for me personally, and I hope for the